Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the Pak-US relationship, and especially after a couple of statements, one from the American lady, and she says that Pakistan's financial problems or the current issues which Pakistan is facing at the moment, that is all because of the Chinese debt which they have received. So they are pretty much unclear, and that is the primary reason, or rather one of the primary reasons about the current turmoil. At the same time, the Chinese Foreign Office spokesperson today issued a statement. He said that we totally support Pakistan for reaching out to the IMF for a bailout package, and this is going to definitely benefit them. But having said that, he said that Chinese, whether you call that a loan or you call that an investment or you call that a long-term project financing, that is not the cause for the current financial crisis of Pakistan. But having said that, the IMF again, the chief economist of the IMF has said that they will review this, and he also exactly toed the same line which was earlier told by the Americans, and he said that primarily it seems that the Chinese debt is the main cause. But again, as we all know, that currently the situation is not that great. The current finance minister of Pakistan, Asad Umar Sahab, has stated that there is no pressure of US on the IMF. But obviously, when you look at the overall situation, it's like US is number one, then it's Japan, and then it's China. So currently, when you look at the facts and figures, 17.68%, almost 18% is the kind of grant or the money which is injected by the Americans in the IMF, and it is around 6.49% by the Chinese. That is the overall, I would say, the kind of influence they have there as far as the decision making is concerned. Obviously, whenever you go to IMF, tough conditions are always applied. You have to go through a procedure. You have to make sure that whatever money you're getting back, and you have to, in fact, convince them, just like a bank, that these are the parameters you need to undertake, and this is what you need to do in the future, and this is the course of action you will undertake in the coming years, and that's how you'll return this particular amount of money. But again, Mike Pompeo also mentioned that US won't block IMF bailout package for Pakistan. Obviously, Pakistan is a nuclear power, and nuclear powers are not financially destabilized. This is also one of the school of thought, but how correct it is in 2018, we'll also talk about that. Plus, on top, let's see where it leads. The meeting is going to be held on November 7th, and the overall amount which Pakistan is seeking is around $15 billion. Currently, if you look at the payment which we are giving in dollars as far as our imports is concerned, I mean, that is a very high number. And when you look at the overall forex reserves, again, that is something of prime concern to not only the government but to everybody. Look at the behavior of the stock market today. It lost around 3%, around 1,000 points. And earlier, if you look at the oil prices, which were hovering around $35, $40 a barrel a few years back, they are touching 100, three-digit numbers. So that is of prime concern again. So multiple challenges, multiple economic challenges, I would say, are right in front of Pakistan. To talk about this, we have with us in our studio. Let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us on my right is Professor Dr. Rifat Hussain Saab. Needs an introduction. He's a senior columnist, senior writer, senior studies planner, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
and we
sir.
have with us Ambassador Tajammul Altaf Saab, senior diplomat, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank
And we
you, sir.
also have with us Air Vice Marshal retired Ikramullah Bhatti Saab, senior defense analyst, sir. Thank you very much. Rifat Saab, let's start off from you, sir.
Ji.
A lot of measures which normally the IMF always suggests to the government, like increase in the utility prices, obviously that leads to the inflation, and so on and so forth, multiple. Today I was reading that 3.5 rupees per unit price could be increased as far as your tariff of electricity is concerned, and this is what we've been witnessing, oil prices for that matter, and some other parameters, you know, tax base enhancement basically. That is what we've been hearing for so many years, but still we haven't reached that level where we should have been. So on and so forth. So obviously something which is not very popular for the government as far as such a decision is considered, because as you have witnessed in the elections which were held yesterday, that people are not that happy with the current situation. But if you look at what is going on, what exactly is happening, no government wants that people should suffer, but at the end of the day, some hard steps need to be taken. And when you look at IMF bailout package, sir, this is going to be 22nd, if I'm not wrong, sir, for Pakistan. India got themselves cleared in early 90s. I think that was the last time when they went to IMF. And as you say, sir, IMF is a bank which gives you money, but takes 10 times more back, but still the principal amount remains there. And this is what has been happening, sir. But again, having said that, there is no other option. So your take.
Well, I'm sure there are other options. For example, if you look at the current size of the official economy, which is roughly around $300 billion, and if you add up to this the grey economy or the black economy or the informal economy, then the size doubles. So we are looking at half $1 trillion economy of Pakistan. It's a country of 200 million people. The state may not have a lot of wealth at its disposal, but there are people who are filthy rich, if I may use that colloquial. So there is no dearth of money. The question is that the money is not available to the government of Pakistan, and they are responsible for running the economy. So I think if Pakistan were to rely on its own resources, if they were to cut down, for example, the import, expensive luxury item imports worth $2 billion, so that will reduce, about 20% of the need that we are for which we are approaching the IMF, and then along with that, if we were to enhance our export capacity, so that will be another $1 billion, and then Pakistan also has the option to float in Islamic bond, the bond in the European market.
But this is the markup. I mean, during the current crisis, first of all, we have to see the kind of response they'll get, and plus, at the end of the day, if it is at a higher markup, which most likely it is going to, how will we pay that? I mean, that is another question.
No, but isn't those tough measures that I'm suggesting, can they be a substitute for IMF bailout package, for which, as you rightly point out, that they are going to impose very harsh conditions on Pakistan. First of all, they are going to ask for a cut in the public spending. Number two, they are going to ask the removal of subsidies on food items, on the basic needs, and they are going to ask for a taxation system which is going to be very harsh. So ultimately the net result of all these measures is going to be that the consumer life, the life of the consumer is going to get further depressed. Now, is that something that Pakistan is willing to pay as a price for going to the IMF package? So what I'm suggesting is that it's not that Pakistan does not have any other option, but to me it appears that this government has decided in its mind to approach the IMF, and hence we are going to approach the IMF, and they will give us a package and they will impose their harsh conditions. But while I'm addressing this subject, I should also mention the US influence over the IMF. It's very widely known that whether it comes to the World Bank or Asian Development Bank or particularly IMF, the US, because it holds all the cards, and there has hardly been ever a package of IMF package where a country has approached the IMF and the US has not approved it or has not supported it, and if because of the American influence, because of the weightage system, America has a lot of clout over the IMF. So the question is that will the Americans be lenient towards Pakistan in asking for some relaxation that will be given to Pakistan in terms of the IMF conditionalities. So only I think IMF package, if we want to go for it, we should go for a small duration package, a smaller package, and the rest of it should be we should learn to manage on our own. I think it's no coincidence that Pakistan has repeatedly gone back to the IMF, and this is the 22nd time that we are going to approach the package. And one thing more is that any government that has gone to the IMF package and they have never come back to power again. So that's also a lesson that we need to
Yes,
remember.
that is indeed something
Yeah.
of prime concern, because that is something which directly affects the life of common people,
Yeah.
and that is, you rightly mentioned, the consumers. Now, so one important point, I mean, when you talk about the US, they said that they will examine closely the Pakistan request for the IMF bailout package. At the same time, when you look at the statement issued by none other than the chief economist of IMF, it is very similar. And they both have said that it is because of the Chinese debt primarily. But the Chinese spokesperson says that it is not because of the Chinese debt. I mean, there seems to be two different opinions. First of all, sir, comment on the previous question, and
Sure.
then please
Sure.
throw light on this as well.
First of all, thank you so very much again inviting me for this show. And I fully agree with the views of my co-panelist, Dr. Talat Hussain Sahib. And to add, I mean, what is this myth of death trap and death burden? Let us try to understand that. No doubt, situation right now on the ground is quite serious for Pakistan to address these current financial difficulties and the problems which we are facing upfront. But as a matter of fact, 2 years ago when Managing Director IMF, Christine Lagarde, came to Pakistan, and it was on the successful completion of Pakistan's IMF program. And she was more than optimistic in saying, yes, we are more than happy with Pakistan and its achievement, and we hope and wish that in the future Pakistan perhaps will not be reverting to the IMF for a similar package or program. And she was also very positively looking at CPEC projects. And she said, we essentially need, like countries in the third world, especially Pakistan, does need that support from China in its CPEC projects. And we are optimistic about, all these projects and communication and infrastructure and all that road network, rail network coming from China in the form of CPEC. So I really want to understand what happened in the last 2 years, that not only IMF, senior American leadership, Mike Pompeo himself, State Department spokesperson, and chief economist you mentioned, and also a group of 16 senators from the United States. They came up with some sort of doubts about this debt trap and China's role. For me, on the one side, point number one, we have to analyze it in a bigger picture, what is happening in our region in terms of CPEC and BRI and OBOR, and these mega projects and their financial implications, and the way China is emerging economically as a superpower. Secondly, its impact on Pakistan, and what exactly it is going to pay us back, and what we are supposed to pay back to China in terms of our loans, and what exactly is this debt trap. It has been clarified time and again, even in this year, more than by the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Planning, and also even Chinese Foreign Minister when he came to Pakistan in June this year. And he was categorically stating, look, now people are raising finger, and this was towards United States of America, that this is some sort of Chinese debt trap which is emerging.
But sir, if you look at the kind of investment Chinese have made in Africa, or in Sri Lanka for that matter, and some other countries, I mean, and their conditionalities were pretty harsh, and they were very tough. So looking at that, and then obviously we have common grounds. We call it the friendship is higher than the mountains, deeper than the ocean, sweeter than the honey. But at the end of the day, it's all about the economic interests, sir.
Let us go beyond this symbolism, higher than Himalayas and deeper than oceans and sweeter than honey. Let us come on factually on the table. What are things? What I try to discern or understand is that Pakistan is not looking for that sort of foreign loans recently. It is our history. And it is categorically clear to all of us, look, what is the quantum of that loans which are coming to Pakistan? Right now, 47% of those loans are coming from international financial institutions, including IMF. 18% are coming from Paris Club, and only 10% are coming China in terms
And
of
the
this
ones
CPEC.
coming from Paris Club were the one which were rescheduled way back, correct, sir?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And on those terms and conditions even now.
And 10% are Chinese loans. And let us try to understand what are these CPEC projects 22 which they are carrying out in Pakistan. Out of these 22 projects, 9 have already been completed and 13 are under completion. And Chinese direct investment or investment in these projects out of total outlay of 60 billion US dollar is 19 billion US dollar direct Chinese investment and assistance coming from the Chinese banks and loaning agencies.
Private sector.
Where Pakistan does not have to play any role right now or tomorrow for paying back. This is their liability. And out of these 22 projects, 18 projects are covered under Chinese assistance and investment, and only 4 projects are under loans. And loans are on very easy terms, 1 to 2%. Repayment period or paying back of period is 30 to 35, 40 years. And how one can say that this is a trap, exactly like as you are mentioning about the African countries. I have served in Tanzania and I know the first visit of President Xi Jinping after Russia was to Tanzania and South Africa and Ghana. And he has given them an action plan for the next 50 years, what China is going to do with them. And there is still a lot of propaganda coming from the West, always trying to hit on those points which are serving their interest and putting all other things
So
under the
primarily it's a
carpet.
financial war between the two giants at the
is.
top and
It
smaller.
is.
So I'll just come back to you, Ambassador. Now, sir, first of all, your take, sir. Let's consider it's not a trap, debt or a debt trap as they call it. But still, sir, a lot of people do believe that we're putting all our eggs in one basket, and then going to IMF is not a great idea, and so forth. And there's going to be a lot of problem for the current government, because these are not the popular decisions, because they are going after those who are corrupt, maybe those who are not paying their taxes, maybe consulting the IMF, and so on and so forth. But they never had a choice. No government wants that people should suffer at the end of the day, and they should be scrutinized for that. Sir.
Well, we just learned that it is the 22nd time that Pakistan is seeking a bailout package from IMF. And the previous 21 times there were no Chinese debt operative which could have caused this.
So why to relate it now?
Yes. And now you see, we also know that Pakistan has been suffering from this situation for quite a while. And as Professor Saab mentioned, you see, it is primarily our imbalance in our exports and imports, our manufacturing sector or our industry having deteriorated. Even our agriculture has not been coming up to the occasion. And then we've had several national level business ventures of the order of the steel mill, PIA, railway, which have been not performing and which have been a drain.
Your circular debt for this year is 1.2 trillion, sir.
There you are. And then of course, there has been a serious shortfall in our energy sector, electricity, gas, which has actually affected our industry. And then government has been used to giving a lot of subsidies to the people, and they're quite used to it. Even in energy sector, I mean, even in gas is subsidized. So with all this accumulated, we find that Pakistan is again in a situation where we have to seek a bailout from IMF. Now, while we have been hearing this, that Pakistanis are rich people, unfortunately the government is poor, and there is a lot of potential which is available, and somehow while we have been hearing this for the last several years, no government has made a very serious effort to tap this reservoir of wealth owned by the Pakistanis, both in country as well as overseas. And while we know that we have an equal amount of grey economy available to us to tap into and solve our this debt issue and or resource crunch issue, but somehow no government has seriously taken this up. Now, while the current government has had a very little time to actually tap into it, while they keep saying this, that they're going to, bring money back, that will take quite a while. And in the meantime, they have to run the country, they have to run the economy, they have to maintain the position of Pakistan on the global forum. So, in order to sustain this, they have to seek a bailout package. So, that is what that was something which was inescapable, which was unavoidable, that had to be done. While in the beginning I might say that they delayed it, probably they may have had some communication or discussion behind the scene with the US, because the US had at least 2 months ago they had already indicated they are going to question this, and they have around 18% voting rights, the highest weightage that they have. So, they could affect this. So, probably by now behind the door enough negotiations have taken place, the Americans are willing to accommodate, while they will continue to say that they will question this. And the fact remains that at the international level, we find that now with the rise of China, the Americans are definitely going to impede their progress, impede their rise, and of course disrupt their ability to influence global events, especially in the global economic order. So, they would like to challenge the OBOR, which is the major project that the Chinese have launched in Asia and Africa, and even towards Europe, and CPEC is of course spearheading this project. So, with that in the background, we find that it is understandable as to why the Americans are highlighting this Pakistan's request for bailout package in the color of CPEC, just because
because this was also mentioned by Mr. Donald Trump, if you remember, sir, that all this money which IMF is going to give to Pakistan will eventually be given to China indirectly, because they have to pay off that debt, or the
We already know that there is a very little component of the debt which of course is being owed to the Chinese. So, that is again essentially Americans or Mr. Trump is trying to of course fight his own war on Pakistani turf and with the Chinese. But I think what we need to be mindful of is that while we are seeking this package, and hopefully it will go through, and the fact remains that it is now time that Pakistan need to tap into its available resources. We need to tighten our belt, we need to improve our exports, we need to reduce our imports, we need to help our manufacturing sector, we need to help our agriculture sector, we need to of course cut back on our subsidies, and we need to convince the people and tell them and educate them that it is time that we started to tighten our belt, and it is time that we started to check our spending and improve our financial situation vis-a-vis the imbalance that we have in our resource in our spending. So, and if the government is able to do that, I think they will be able to come out of this maybe in 2 years or 3 years time.
That's what the government is currently talking about, 2 years minimum. Now, so another important point is the sort of impression which we are getting that USA can veto this. Can they do that, sir?
No, they can't. They can't. But because of their voting rights, they have a
sir, do explain what do you exactly 18 point, what is the exact number? It is 17.68, almost 18%. That is the voting right they have, whereas the Chinese have 6.49%. What difference does that make, and what exactly, when we say this, is supposed to mean, sir?
The US is not alone. There are other members of the IMF consortium, and they also have their powers or their veto rights. But unfortunately, because United States is the leader of the capitalist order, capitalist world, so all the other countries, they look towards the United States leadership. So, because of that, the Americans are able not only to exercise their right as one country, but they are a group of countries that are working together. For example, the Americans have in the past, they have joined hands with France, they have joined hands with Germany, and they have joined hands with UK, and and all the other countries. So, there is a collective pressure that is mounted, and the Americans have been able to influence the IMF decision making processes way beyond their individual weight.
So when you
that-
say they can influence, what is that supposed to mean? I mean, they can say no, or they can, in fact, guide or persuade the IMF to sort of, give their own sort of conditionalities and
Well,
say that, try to, for example, let's suppose, I mean, certain financial squeezing is something which makes a lot of sense. But say, for example, should we also relate FATF with it, for example? At some stage, the Americans would say, okay, you know what, we are not satisfied. Can that be also related? That is a
Of course, of course. There are not only economic considerations which
Yeah, that's what the
determine
point is,
which determine the package, IMF package, but there are also extra economic considerations. Like for example, if the FATF were to declare, God forbid, that Pakistan should not either should remain in the grey list or should be included in the blacklist. So that will be a severe jolt to Pakistan's reputation also, and Pakistan's credibility as a responsible member of the international community, and that impression will contribute toward the IMF package. So it's imperative that Pakistan should try to put its own house in order, and accept the IMF package as an imperative, but only in the short term. And Pakistan's long-term view should be to develop an economic base which essentially is self-reliance, relying on its own resources, and trying to develop indigenous capacity. And there are many resources available which are not being brought into the tax net. So I think the informal sector is something that Pakistan needs to document, and and develop an approach which relies more on its own resources and reduces its dependence on external lenders, especially IMF. And external borrowing, even though when you are getting it from a country like China, essentially remains external borrowing.
Absolutely.
And that money at some point has to be paid back.
Exactly.
So unfortunately, we have blindly borrowed money, not only from the domestic market but also from the international financial
kind of a
institutions.
misuse of a credit card.
Yeah.
So one more important point. I mean, it's just like that, if you have a good credit history, or for that matter, if you've never involved in an accident, you go to an insurance company and they'll give you a very decent package. Whereas, for example, if you've been involved or your driving is not satisfactory, the person is going to go high.
Yes.
In certain cases, when you refer to IMF, for example, if they have not shown satisfaction over FATF, whether you're in gray area or there is a probability that you could be in black area, obviously, sir, things would matter. And secondly, when they really push Pakistan to do more, for example, whereas we have done whatever we could have, but still the Americans, for one reason or another, they're not that satisfied. Do you think that can also be a part in this case, sir, where you...
Well, first of all, I again fully agree with the views of Dr. Talat Hussain Sahib on all these assessment and
Rifat Hussain Sahib, sir.
Rifat Hussain Sahib, beg your pardon. And having said that whatever is coming for us is both an opportunity and challenge in the current situation. And United States of America, especially Donald Trump, along with its Western allies, are trying to put maximum pressure on China in these trade wars and all that, and Pakistan, of course, in between because of CPEC, will be also the victim of that sort of stringent, conditionalities. And perhaps there will be a clear message to a lending agency, IMF, to have very special or stringent conditions for this bailout package. It could be like people are now talking about that NFC award allocations for the provinces should be drastically cut down so that there are more federal revenue to be generated, which can be a big irritant between the provinces and the center. And I'm sure that the Ministry of Finance and the Prime Minister have already announced we are not going to do that. But other than that, whatever conditions are coming to raise, interest rate on your banking monies and all that, are increased prices of utilities and all that, and more devaluation of rupee. All these are factors which they may be thinking to put an indirect economic pressure on Pakistan in such a way that we look what is going to happen with us. And then we will be having a very little space to interact or act or react. Okay? So in that way, we definitely need to put our own house in order, where we need a lot of improvement, fiscal reforms, economic reforms and all that which we are talking about to control, to reduce our imports and increase our exports and all that, and then try to really build up some sort of our internal mechanism where we are able to breathe. Now, no one is going to give us now easy insurance, I'm sure, and this time it is going to be tough time, because now world is divided into two definitely big blocks. No globalism, patriotism, nationalism, far right approach, where they will be talking about their own interest and values, and on the other hand another block emerging in the form of China on purely economic strength. Where do we fall in between in all that arrangement? Of course, tightening the belt is one thing, and as
You were in lie with one and now you're in lie with another.
Prime Minister said, perhaps in the next 6 months we will be able to come out of that situation. I am not that optimistic. It may take more than 2 years.
Yes.
Or all that. But of course, if there is serious soul searching within the government and also our financial institutions to come out of that catch-22 situation, we may be able to. Otherwise, we may also be looking, as you said, sometimes this side or that side. That is not the solution. And even our credit card and insurance card perhaps will not work.
Well, anyways, at the end of the day, you really look, you have to look into certain very major concepts. That is like, you need to look after your imports, you need to look after your exports, you need to have a certain economic policy, a certain economic model also. Unfortunately, sir, God knows what the previous governments have been doing, or even the current one. I mean, to be very honest, I'm not clear. But sir, one important area. If you remember, sir, we were having a discussion a while ago that what went wrong. Ever since Obama took charge, forget about the number of people who resigned, who were not happy to work with him. I mean, recently the lady who was the ambassador in the UN, she resigned, Nikki Haley. Then you talk about Rex Tillerson, who was made the Secretary of State, left him.
There are reports that James
Mattis, exactly.
may
And
be
the
on
kind
his
of
way out.
statement Donald Trump has issued, well, you know, if he wants to go, he can go. And he's one of the most powerful. So this is the kind of attitude Donald Trump has. You know, he's a very tough cookie. So if he means something, he means business. So not tackling USA, tackling Donald Trump. Do you think that is another challenge for Pakistan, sir, when you have a new government, which is very fragile, I would say, considering the results which emerged yesterday in the political, I would say, arena? I mean, very close, I would say. Yes, PTI had a margin, but still they were very close. And obviously, I'm sure the opposition in the coming days, since we have heard that there could be some senior politicians from PPP under, you know, rather in the line of fire. So that is also going to create a lot of problem, uncertainty. Look at the stock market's behavior, sir. From $80 billion capitalism, you know, it's come down to 50. You talk about rupee devaluation, sir. Look at where it is hovering right now. It has doubled ever since when People's Party came into power. It was well under 70, I remember, 67, 68. In 2008, May, when the oil prices were at $147 per barrel, dollar was still at 61 rupees. So looking at these economic indicators, sir, do you think the real tidal wave is coming?
Well, you see, as far as Pakistan's economic woes are concerned, I think we should not hold Donald Trump responsible for it.
No, what I'm saying is, sir, considering the kind of alignment we had earlier with the USA, and now it seems that you have like taken a U-turn, or you're looking towards east now.
Fair
And
enough.
all those countries who were part of center seaters, even you talked about Turkey or Iran or Pakistan, they're all in the line of fire.
Fair enough. So, firstly, he is not responsible for wherever we are today, economically.
We, our own selves are responsible.
Yes.
Yeah, we are ourselves responsible for
There's
it.
no doubt.
And of course, he can be part of the solution if he likes to. But If I think he is not part of the solution, I think that gives us again, I'll borrow Ambassador Saab's words, that gives us again an opportunity as well as a challenge. And I think it is now time for us to rise to the occasion and start to stand on our own feet. And we must take this as a challenge as a nation, because this day had to come. The way we were performing economically, this had to come. And now I think there is no turning back, and we have to face it squarely, and we have to we keep saying this, we need to put our house in order, while that deals with several other sectors, but economic sector is one which definitely needs
Absolutely.
real work of putting in order. And I think now that the government has this challenge, they must rise to it, and they must solve it. And I think we have the potential as a country, as a nation, as a people. I think we have the potential, and we can set it right. And if the government sets clear objectives, makes clear policies which are understood by the people, and I think they will all understand this, and they will contribute, and they will support the government policies, because when we know that we have to put the house in order ourselves, nobody is going to come to our rescue. The Chinese, of course, they have their own interests. The Americans have their own interests. The IMF has its own interests, and we have to take care of our own interests, and that is that we have to get a country on its feet, and we have the ability to do that. We have our own assets, we have our own resources, they just have to be tapped. And the moment that happens, it may take a year, it may 2 years, it may take 3 years, but we can come out of it. We have the capacity, we have the capability, we have the resources, and it can be done. And of course, the government has to come up to the occasion. They have to lead, they have to make policies, they have to convince the people, because the belt has to be tightened, the imports have to be reduced, the exports have to be increased, and the subsidies have to be cut down. The national level business ventures have to be more made efficient, and of course we need to export our manpower, because right now we find that our people are coming back. I mean, foreign exchange.
A lot more people will come back, your remittances will go down, a lot of people are going to come back from the Middle East. When you talk about human capital, sir, we are not prepared. Honestly speaking, it's not that we are not technically sound, it's the attitude of the people. You will find people from India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Tamil side, from all over the world, sir, in the service sector, not Pakistanis.
So we need to train them, we need to educate them. So many of them have come back from overseas, they have seen how people work, what is the work environment over there, what are the work ethics over there, what are the skills required, what is the level of responsibility concerned people have to be able to stay employed or grow and improve and promote. So I think again it is the government, they'll have to take care of this, because we have a lot of manpower, young people, they can be trained, they can be equipped, they can be qualified, and I think they can be exported, and it will add to our a very vitally required foreign exchange. So I think we have the capacity, and the ball is in the government's court. They have to come up to the occasion, and there is no shortcut to this, and they have to take the people along, be it harsh, be it difficult, be it belt tightening, but it has to be done.
There's no other way out.
There is no other way
now,
out.
sir, since challenges and opportunities, I still remember this was what Musharraf Sahab used to state when we witnessed something very tragic. That was the earthquake of 2005, October 8th. I remember that he used to talk about that, at the same time we've got so much of opportunity. Sir, we haven't done anything, to be very honest. I'm not going to blame the culture which we have as far as work is concerned, or we are corrupt or something. Every other nation is also. But we haven't done. You talk about GPS plus status, something which was granted to us for 1.5, couldn't do much. Where are we, sir? What are we up to be very honest? Last quick comment, sir, on this particular point from three of you gentlemen, sir.
Well, I think we need to engage in a lot of soul searching, and one particular focus should be that where did we go wrong and why did we fail. So from that analysis, from that recognition has to flow the prescription. Without, and we should not be fudging the facts. We should not be hiding from the harsh reality that we haven't done anything, and it's a collective failure. I do not blame the masses, but it's a collective failure of the ruling elite of this country. And you look at their lifestyle, it is not commensurate with what Pakistan's the poverty and the state of economy that Pakistan has. So I think once we have done that soul searching, once we have done that analysis, and then the prescription, even though they may be very hard pill to swallow, but that's a prescription that we will have to ultimately bite.
So,
Well, adding to the points of Dr. Saab, true, all these domestic arrangements which we have to make, let us take CPEC as blessing from our friend China, okay? And I have no doubt we have to really change our direction now fully from the west to the east.
we'll have to.
We will have to.
So you balancing is going to be a problem.
We will have to change direction at least to reach that level where we stand on our own feet, number one. Number two, all these CPEC projects which are going to be there established, fundamental projects have already been put in. You will agree with me, in 2015 no one was ready even to come to Pakistan for $100 investment.
So other than China, nobody is even ready to do so right now.
FDI and all that. And if at all this opportunity has been given to us, I take it as blessing, and let us focus on all that trickle down impact of these projects, especially the establishment of industrial zones and special economic zones, and industry which is coming from China and western side of Pakistan where we need more industries and more jobs and all that, that if we really tap that in proper way along with all the points raised by
And we need to do that on war footing, sir. Otherwise,
We
there's
have
no,
to, we
there's
have
no,
to.
Sir, last closing remarks from you,
You
sir.
see, while CPEC or foreign direct investment may create a lot of job and business opportunities, unfortunately our people are not prepared. They are not trained. They are not equipped. They do not have the right amount of skill or even work ethics to be able to take up those jobs. So we witness that Chinese are bringing their own workforce just because we people have not been able to come up to their requirement. So I think we need to focus, we should have focused actually 2-3 years ago on developing our people, and be it schools, be it mosques or be it vocational institutes, we have not been able to train our people as to what is the demand of the market. And unfortunately we find that even the Chinese are bringing their own people, and we are not able to go and take up the jobs which are available now for Pakistanis. We are not skilled, we are not educated, we are not trained, we do not have the required responsibility that we have to have, and that is why people are not taking it.
A lot needs to be done. Anyway, VM sir, thank you very much. Best, it was a pleasure. Dr. Sir, thank you very much. And that's all we have for this up. I'll see you inshallah tomorrow. Till then, you take good care. Assalamu alaikum. Ways to tackle the issue, provided there's a will, there's a way. So last 15 seconds, please, concluding remarks.
Yeah, I think as Brigadier Sahab has said, that we should put our act together as a nation, as a country, as a state. We are at very one of the weakest moment again, like we need a loan from IMF to survive, otherwise we will go bankrupt. And such a huge population, imagine this country with a nuclear arsenal going bankrupt? What will be the
Yeah,
consequences
that is
of
the
that?
problem. But anyway, sir,
So,
let's see where it
yeah,
leads. But
we
a
should-
lot needs to be
yeah.
done. There is a lot of effort that is
Lot of-
required, sir. We have to put our own house in order first, and then we have to look outward. Anyway, sir, thank you very much, Brigadier Sahab. It was a pleasure having you, sir. And that's all we have for this week. I'll see you on Monday, inshallah. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz from our side.